My dear friends, in life there comes a stage where silence becomes louder than the noise around us. A stage where the crowd fades away, the applause disappears, and the world that once seemed so full suddenly feels empty. And it is in that silence, in that loneliness, that the real test of our strength begins. Most people fear loneliness. They fear being left out, they fear being alone with their thoughts, and they fear facing themselves. But let me remind you, loneliness is not your enemy. It is your greatest teacher. When you are surrounded by people, you hear their voices. When you are alone, you finally hear your own. And that voice, your inner voice, is the compass that guides you to who you truly are. Think about it. Some of the greatest leaders, thinkers, and visionaries spent long periods in solitude. They weren't afraid of being alone. They understood that loneliness builds resilience. It teaches you how to stand when no one is there to hold your hand. It teaches you how to walk when the world doesn't walk with you. And it teaches you how to believe in yourself even when no one else does. When you embrace loneliness, you discover the strength that was always inside you. You start realizing that your worth does not depend on who stays or who leaves. Your peace does not depend on the noise of the world. And your happiness does not depend on the approval of others. It depends only on you. Loneliness gives you clarity. It shows you what really matters. And it removes the distractions that keep you away from your purpose. You see, a diamond is formed under pressure. And a strong human being is formed in solitude. Do not run from it. Do not fear it. Let loneliness polish you. Let it break you free from dependence. And let it shape you into someone unshakable. The truth is, people will come and people will go. Seasons will change. Relationships will shift. But the one person who will never leave you, who will always be with you, is you. And if you learn to enjoy your own company, if you learn to find peace in your own presence, you will never feel empty again. So next time you feel lonely, do not see it as a punishment. See it as preparation. Life is preparing you for something greater. Life is telling you, stand tall, because one day you will be needed to stand alone. And when that day comes, you will not break. You will shine. My friends, don't fear loneliness. Embrace it. Because loneliness is not weakness. It is strength in its purest form. And when you learn to walk alone, you will discover that you were never truly alone. The universe, God, and your inner spirit were always walking with you. When we talk about loneliness, most people immediately think of it as something negative, something to avoid at all costs. But the truth is, loneliness is not an enemy. It is one of the greatest teachers in life, and often the most misunderstood. Think about it. In a world where we are constantly surrounded by noise, social media notifications, endless conversations, entertainment at our fingertips, it almost feels unnatural to be alone. We've been conditioned to believe that if you are alone, something must be wrong with you. But in reality, loneliness has a purpose. It has a deep spiritual and emotional significance, and if we learn to look at it differently, it can completely transform the way we live. When you are surrounded by people, your mind is filled with their voices, their opinions, and their expectations. You are pulled in 100 directions at once. But the moment you step into loneliness, those voices fade away. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you are not used to hearing the silence. But slowly, something powerful begins to happen. You start to hear your own voice. That voice, which is often drowned out by the world, begins to guide you. It tells you what you truly want, what you truly value, and what path is right for you. Without loneliness, this voice is almost impossible to hear because it is buried under the weight of the crowd. Loneliness teaches you self-awareness. It forces you to stop running away from yourself and start facing the person you really are. Many people live their whole lives avoiding themselves because facing your thoughts, your flaws, your regrets, and your insecurities can feel painful. That's why so many people fill their days with distractions. They don't want to sit in silence because silence reveals the truth. But here's the beauty, The same silence that reveals your fears also reveals your strength. Loneliness teaches you to embrace your weaknesses and transform them into strengths. It shows you that you are capable of handling far more than you ever thought. In loneliness, you begin to separate what is truly yours from what is borrowed from the world. You realize that many of your beliefs, habits, and choices were not even yours. They were imposed by others, by society, by peer pressure. Loneliness gives you the chance to wipe away that noise and ask, what do I really believe? What do I really want? Who am I without the influence of the crowd? That question may sound frightening, but answering it is one of the most liberating experiences in life. It is in loneliness that you discover your authentic self. There is a reason why so many saints, philosophers, and even great leaders embraced solitude. They didn't fear being alone. They understood that loneliness sharpens clarity. Think about it. When the mind is pulled in 10 directions, it can't see clearly. But when everything goes quiet, the mind begins to focus, like still water reflecting the sky. Loneliness is that still water. It reflects back to you what is truly inside. It allows you to see beyond the illusions of the world and recognize the deeper truths of life. Most of the time, people confuse loneliness with emptiness. But the two are not the same. Emptiness is when you have nothing to hold on to inside. Loneliness, however, is when you have the chance to fill yourself with meaning. It is not the absence of people, but the presence of your own spirit. If you can shift your perspective, loneliness becomes a sacred space. It becomes a classroom where life teaches you lessons that no one else can teach. One of the most profound lessons loneliness gives is resilience. When you depend on others for validation, you are like a building without a foundation, easily shaken. But when you learn to be content in loneliness, you build your foundation on yourself. You realize that your worth does not depend on who stays or who leaves. It does not depend on how many friends you have, how many likes you get, or how many people approve of you. Your worth becomes rooted in something deeper. Your inner self, your connection with God, and your awareness of life's purpose. That realization is powerful because once you have it, no amount of rejection, betrayal, or abandonment can shake you the same way again. Loneliness also teaches you how to manage your emotions. When you are constantly surrounded by people, you often react to situations based on external triggers. But when you are alone, you are forced to process your emotions internally. You start to notice the patterns of your thoughts, the way your emotions rise and fall, and you learn how to regulate them. This kind of emotional mastery only comes when you are alone with yourself, when you are not distracted by constant noise. In fact, the fear of loneliness is what keeps many people trapped in unhealthy relationships, toxic environments, or meaningless pursuits. They are so afraid of being alone that they settle for less than they deserve. But loneliness teaches you patience. It reminds you that it is better to walk alone in truth than to walk with a crowd in lies. It is better to be alone and at peace than to be surrounded and restless. Once you learn this lesson, you stop making choices out of fear and start making them out of strength. I want you to imagine a seed planted deep in the soil. For a long time, that seed is completely alone in the dark. It may feel buried, isolated, forgotten. But in that darkness, something miraculous is happening. It is developing roots. It is gathering strength. And when the time is right, it breaks through the soil and rises toward the light, stronger and more resilient than before. That is exactly what loneliness does for us. It feels like darkness, but it is actually preparation. It is where your roots of strength grow deep. Without that stage, you can never grow tall. Another beautiful thing about loneliness is that it teaches gratitude. When you spend time alone, you learn to appreciate the smallest details. The sound of your own breath, the beauty of nature, the stillness of the moment. You begin to see that life's gifts were always there, but you were too busy to notice them. Loneliness slows you down so you can finally appreciate what really matters. And once you carry that gratitude in your heart, even when you return to the crowd, You no longer take things for granted. So many people chase happiness in others, forgetting that happiness is an inside job. Loneliness forces you to look inward for happiness instead of outward. At first, it feels strange because you're so used to others being the source of your joy. But slowly, you realize that joy that comes from within is unshakable. It doesn't matter who comes or who goes, you remain at peace. That is one of the greatest gifts loneliness can give. And my dear friends, I want to emphasize this. Loneliness is temporary, but the strength it gives you is permanent. Seasons of solitude don't last forever. People will come into your life again. Connections will form again. Love will find you again. But when it does, you will enter those relationships not out of fear of being alone, but out of fullness. You won't cling to others to fill your emptiness. You will share with them the abundance you already found within yourself. That is the kind of strength that makes relationships healthier, career stronger, and life more meaningful. So, don't look at loneliness as a curse. See it as a blessing in disguise. It is a sacred period of growth, a time when life is whispering, find yourself, build yourself, strengthen yourself. Because when you do, you will realize you never lost anything by being alone. You gained the most important thing, you gained yourself. Strength is not built in the comfort of company. Strength is built in the fire of solitude. In the quiet hours when no one is watching, in the moments when you feel completely on your own, and yet you choose not to give up. When we are surrounded by people, it's easy to lean on their shoulders, it's easy to borrow their energy, their encouragement, their presence. But what happens when those shoulders are no longer there? What happens when the applause stops, when the crowd disappears, and when the voices that once supported you fade into silence? That is when the truth of your strength is revealed. Being alone doesn't just reveal strength, it creates it. Solitude is like a gym for the soul. Just as your muscles grow when they are challenged, your spirit grows when it is tested by loneliness. Every time you stand up after falling down, every time you wipe your own tears, every time you push through without anyone cheering you on, you are building a kind of inner muscle that no one can see, but everyone will eventually feel. This strength is not the kind that shouts loudly. It's the kind that stands quietly and unshakably, no matter what storms come your way. When you are forced to walk alone, you discover resilience. You realize that the world can strip away your support, your recognition, even your relationships, and yet you still have the ability to stand. That realization is one of the most powerful discoveries a human being can make. Because once you know that you can stand alone, you are no longer afraid of losing people. You are no longer desperate for approval. You are no longer paralyzed by rejection. You walk into the world with a new confidence. One that says, I can handle whatever comes because I've already handled the silence of being alone. Loneliness also teaches you self-reliance. Too often, we grow dependent on others for our happiness, our decisions, even our sense of identity. We let their opinions define us, their validation shape us, and their presence sustain us. But when you are alone, there is no one else to carry you. There is no one else to tell you who you are. And so you are forced to rely on yourself. At first, this feels frightening, but over time, it becomes liberating. You start to realize that you don't need constant validation to know your worth. You don't need others to make you feel complete. You are enough as you are. That is strength in its purest form. Think of a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind blows fiercely, the rain beats down, and yet the tree does not run to another tree for protection. It cannot. It has no choice but to stand where it is. And how does it survive? By relying on its own roots. The deeper the roots, the stronger the tree. Loneliness is that storm for us. It forces us to dig our roots deeper into ourselves, deeper into our faith, deeper into our inner resources. And when those roots grow strong, no storm, no rejection, no failure, no heartbreak can uproot us. Another thing solitude does is it strengthens your ability to make decisions. When you are always surrounded by others, It is easy to let their opinions sway you. But when you are alone, you are the only voice in the room. You are the one who has to decide. And yes, that pressure can feel heavy. But every decision you make on your own strengthens your confidence. It builds trust between you and yourself. And once you learn to trust yourself, you are no longer a prisoner of indecision. You become someone who can lead, someone who can stand firm even when the world is uncertain. Loneliness also builds emotional strength. Life will always bring moments of disappointment, betrayal, and loss. If you are too dependent on others, these moments will break you. But if you have learned in solitude how to sit with your emotions, how to process them, how to find peace, even when no one else is around, then those same moments will no longer crush you. Instead, they will refine you. Emotional strength is not about never feeling pain. It is about knowing how to face pain without being destroyed by it. And that kind of strength can only be learned in solitude. Some of the most inspiring stories in history come from people who learned strength in loneliness. Think of inventors, artists, and leaders who spent long nights working alone, doubted by the world, yet refusing to give up. They didn't wait for company to keep them strong, they discovered strength within. That is why their work still inspires us today, because strength born in solitude is lasting, unshakable, and authentic. You see, anyone can be strong when the crowd is cheering. But real strength is proven when the stands are empty, when the lights are off, and when you are left with nothing but yourself. If you can find the courage to move forward in those moments, then you have discovered a strength that no one can take away from you. My dear friends, don't run from loneliness. Let it teach you. Let it test you. Let it train you. Because every tear you wipe on your own, every decision you make without guidance, every moment you rise from the floor without a hand pulling you up is a silent victory. These small victories may not be seen by the world, but they are shaping you into someone unstoppable. So the next time you feel alone, remind yourself, this is not weakness. This is training. This is life's way of saying, I am preparing you for greater battles, for bigger responsibilities, for higher callings. And when you emerge from that solitude, you will not be the same person who walked into it. You will be stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Strength is not found in never being alone. Strength is found in embracing loneliness, facing yourself, and discovering that you are capable of far more than you imagined. And once you learn that, you will never fear walking alone again. Because you will know, deep down, that you carry within you all the strength you need. Clarity and purpose are two of the greatest gifts loneliness offers us. When life is busy, when the noise of the world surrounds us, when people's voices constantly fill our ears with opinions, expectations, and judgments, it becomes almost impossible to know what we truly want. Our vision gets clouded. Our direction becomes confused. We end up living according to the demands of others rather than the desires of our own soul. But when you step into loneliness, when everything grows quiet, suddenly the fog begins to lift. The noise that once distracted you fades, and in that silence, you begin to see clearly. Loneliness is like cleaning a dusty window. At first, everything looks blurry, but once the dust is wiped away, the outside world comes into focus. In the same way, the solitude you fear is the very thing that clears away the dust of distractions. In loneliness, you start to see which relationships truly matter, which goals are truly worth pursuing, and which paths are meant for you. Without this clarity, we chase after illusions, things that look shiny but leave us empty. Loneliness helps us break free from illusions and return to what is real. Think about how many people spend their lives doing things they don't love, staying in jobs that don't fulfill them, or maintaining friendships that drain them. Why? Because the world around them is loud, constantly telling them, this is what success looks like, this is what happiness looks like, this is what love looks like. And without clarity, people just follow. But when you are alone, you are removed from the pressure of the crowd. You are no longer comparing yourself to others. You are no longer trapped in the race to meet society's expectations. Instead, you have the chance to ask yourself, what do I really want? What is my purpose here? What direction should I truly take? Those questions are not easy, but they are necessary, and only loneliness gives you the courage to answer them honestly. Clarity is powerful because it saves you from wasting your life. Imagine driving a car at full speed, but with a foggy windshield. You may feel like you're moving fast, but you have no idea where you're going. That is how most people live. They are moving, working, striving, but they have no real clarity of direction. Loneliness acts like the moment when the fog clears. Suddenly, the road is visible. You realize you don't need to go where everyone else is going. You can take your own path. And that path may be less crowded, it may feel uncertain, but it will be true to you. Another gift of loneliness is the discovery of purpose. Purpose is not something the world hands to you. It is something you discover within yourself, and that discovery usually comes in silence. When you are alone, you start to notice what gives you joy, what energizes you, and what feels meaningful. You begin to reflect on your experiences, your strengths, your values, and you connect the dots of your life. Slowly, a picture begins to form, and you realize, this is what I meant to do. This is what my life is for. Without moments of loneliness, this realization is nearly impossible, because your attention is always scattered outward instead of inward. Great thinkers, creators, and leaders all speak about the importance of solitude for this reason. Artists retreat into loneliness to find inspiration. Philosophers withdraw into solitude to reflect on truth. Leaders take time away from the crowd to sharpen their vision. They know that purpose is not born in noise but in silence. And once you discover that purpose, life takes on a new meaning. You no longer wake up each day just to survive. You wake up to serve, to create, to live with intention. Loneliness also teaches you to separate desires from distractions. Not everything that calls for your attention deserves your energy. Without clarity, you chase after temporary pleasures that give you quick highs but leave you empty inside. But in solitude, you realize which desires align with your deeper self and which are simply distractions pulling you off course. This understanding is crucial because life is short and wasting it on the wrong pursuits is one of the greatest tragedies. Loneliness protects you from that tragedy by forcing you to reflect and choose wisely. Another way loneliness brings clarity is by revealing the truth about relationships. When you are always with others, it's easy to confuse companionship with connection. But when you step into solitude, you see who truly values you and who only stays for convenience. Loneliness helps you separate genuine bonds from superficial ones. It teaches you that it's better to have a few authentic relationships than to be surrounded by a crowd that doesn't really care. This lesson is painful but liberating because it frees you from the fear of losing people who were never meant to stay. Purpose also emerges in loneliness because, in silence, you begin to hear the call of something higher. Whether you call it God, the universe, or your inner spirit, there is a voice that speaks only in stillness. It reminds you of the bigger picture, that life is not just about chasing success, collecting possessions, or pleasing others. It is about contributing, serving, and living in alignment with your soul. In the rush of daily life, this voice is drowned out. But in loneliness, it becomes clear. And once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. It guides you. It gives you strength. It keeps you steady even when the world around you is unstable. There is also a discipline that comes from the clarity of loneliness. When you are alone, you are forced to set your own boundaries, your own routines, your own priorities. No one else is there to push you or pull you. You learn how to focus, how to direct your energy, how to say no to distractions. This discipline is part of clarity, because clarity without discipline is just a dream. Loneliness gives you both the vision of what you should do and the strength to commit to it. Clarity and purpose are not luxuries, they are necessities. Without them, life feels like a never-ending cycle of effort without fulfillment. Loneliness, though uncomfortable, is the space where clarity is born. It is where you stop pretending, stop performing, and start listening. And when you listen deeply enough, you discover not only what you want to do, but who you are meant to become. So the next time loneliness enters your life, don't see it as a punishment. See it as an invitation to clear the fog, to realign your path, to reconnect with your purpose. It is not life abandoning you, it is life guiding you. It is not silence meant to scare you, it is silence meant to show you. And when that clarity comes, when your purpose reveals itself, you will look back and realize that the loneliness you once feared was the very thing that gave your life meaning. Loneliness is not a punishment, it is preparation. Too often we look at solitude as a curse, as if life has abandoned us. But in truth, loneliness is life's way of shaping us for something greater. When you are alone, it can feel heavy. The silence feels unbearable, the absence of people feels painful, and your heart questions why things turned out this way. But if you look deeper, you will realize that every moment of loneliness is an opportunity. It is training. It is the universe, God, or life itself saying, I am preparing you for the battles ahead, battles you must fight not with weakness, but with strength. You see, no one becomes unshakable without first being shaken. No one becomes strong without first feeling fragile. And no one learns how to stand tall without first experiencing what it feels like to fall. Loneliness is that experience. It removes the support systems you once relied on so that you can learn to stand on your own. It is not cruelty, it is compassion. Because if you are always dependent on others, you will never discover your true potential. Loneliness cuts those ties, not to break you, but to reveal the depth of your inner strength. Think of a soldier preparing for war. Before he ever steps onto the battlefield, he spends countless hours in training, often in isolation, away from the noise of the world. That training is grueling, exhausting, and sometimes even painful. But it is necessary. Because when the real test comes, when the battle begins, he must be ready. Loneliness is that kind of training. It is where your spirit is hardened, where your faith is deepened, and where your resilience is built. Without it, you would crumble the moment life challenged you.